The president and president-elect are both headed to Georgia to campaign in the race which will decide control of the U.S. Senate. After a conference call with members of the military yesterday, President Trump said he would head to Georgia to support Republican Senators Kelly Loeffler and David Perdue as soon as next week. Meanwhile, President-elect Biden's chief of staff said he has plans to campaign for the Democrats, Reverend Raphael Warnock and John Ossoff. Georgia Public Broadcasting reporter Stephen Fowler is with us now. He's been following the Senate and presidential elections in the state. Stephen, thanks so much for being with us. But there was a question for a while about whether President Trump would actually campaign for the Republicans. While Georgia is, of course, in the middle of a recount, the president has lost the state to President-elect Biden. You spend a lot of time there. How do you think the president's events will shape up, and how will they impact this race?
Well, President Trump has to walk a fine line of acknowledging that he did, in fact, lose the state and pushing people to vote in this Senate runoff. There are a lot of Republican supporters in Georgia that believe that Joe Biden did not win the election. And as such, they don't necessarily trust the voting system that we have in place. And having a big runoff where every vote is going to count is going to be a difficult proposition for some voters to show up and turn out. And it's just created this interesting dynamic in an already fascinating race.
Fascinating indeed. And after yesterday's call with the military, the president again brought up these unfounded, disproven allegations of voter fraud in Georgia. I want you to listen to some of that sound.
We are looking at things that are so bad in Georgia. They don't want to show us signatures. The reason they don't want to show us signatures is very simple, because we will find thousands and thousands, a very close race, it's hair thin, but we'll find thousands and thousands of discrepancies, fraud. Why they aren't wanting to show those signatures is amazing.
Now, looking forward to the runoff, how might these attacks from the president impact Republican turnout for this critical race in January?
Right. So the election is January 5th, right in the middle of the holiday season. Georgia has 3 weeks of in-person early voting that starts December 14th, but the days are going to be curbed a little bit because of the Christmas holidays and other days that early voting locations will be closed. And so this election will likely be done through absentee by mail voting and on election day. And many of the Republicans that I've talked to, especially in Northwest Georgia, which is one of the Republican strongholds in the state, don't trust that vote by mail system that you just heard the president talking about with allegations of fraud happening. And so those votes are typically people that have been older, typically Republican as well. So the fewer people you have voting absentee by mail, the tighter the margin is going to be, because Democrats are going to turn out in force voting that method. And many people just might not show up to the polls because of the holidays and really this sense of distrust of the system.
Now, President Trump also called Georgia's Republican Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger a, quote, enemy of the people yesterday. Raffensperger wrote an op-ed earlier this week where he said, quote, this should be something for Georgians to celebrate, whether they favored the presidential candidate who won or the one who lost. For those wondering, mine lost. He says, my family voted for him, donated to him, and we're now being thrown under the bus by him. Now, you recently sat down with Raffensperger, and what else did he say?
So you have to remember that Georgia is still a Republican state. There's a Republican governor, Republican state house and Senate, Republican secretary of state, and all of the rules and laws and systems on how voting works in Georgia were put in place by Republicans. And this is where Brad Raffensperger, the first-term secretary of state, has kind of drawn a line in the sand, that he says, look, it's my job to defend the integrity of these elections and make sure they run smoothly. They did, even though I'm sad about the outcome, I trust it. And that's where some of the fallout has come from, because he sees the writing on the wall that if there are Republicans who are telling people not to trust the voting system and not to trust the outcome and not to believe in the system of democracy, then they may not show up when they need them the most to help decide control of the U.S. Senate.
It's remarkable. You would think the Senate, right? That's the last line of defense for Republicans at this point to preserve the president's few legislative accomplishments. GPV is reporting that $257 million have been spent or will be spent on media ads in these Senate runoffs. That's more than the past election. So where is that money going to go, and where is it coming from?
Well, we are seeing millions and millions of dollars in campaign mailers, campaign ads. I was watching TV last night and saw about 5 different political ads in a row of the 4 Senate candidates, and one Ford ad thrown in for good measure. So we're seeing the airways flooded with TV and radio, mailers, pro and anti-candidate mailers coming in by the truckload to people's mailboxes. And we're seeing a lot from outside groups. You've got, if the 2 Republicans win, they will maintain the Senate majority. If the 2 Democrats win, they will have the tie-breaking vote with Vice President-elect Kamala Harris. So the stakes are high, and the entire country is pouring in money and resources and attention into Georgia. I know I've said before that Georgia is the center of the political universe, but it feels more like a black hole with everything just drawing in so much energy and money and attention. And there's still several weeks more to go in this race where you're going to see money coming in.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, for the next month or so, it is the race. There's a lot on the line. Now, there have been a couple of filings this week in a state superior court in Georgia and a federal appeals court challenging the presidential election results. So can you break down what are the issues in these cases, and do they have any chance in making a difference in the vote count? Clearly, the overall outcome is pretty settled now. But when it comes to this narrow margin in Georgia, could any of these make a difference?
Most likely not. The federal appeals court is a procedural thing where a federal judge last week denied a motion brought by Trump-affiliated attorney Lynn Wood, who sought to block the certification of Georgia's 16 electoral votes, saying that there was widespread fraud. But Georgia already certified its results. And so the appeals court is going to go through that process, but it's likely that that case is moot because you can't block something that's already happened. Another thing that was filed is something that we've seen organizations around the country file lawsuits alleging that the multi-million-dollar grants that different county elections offices around the country have been getting to help make this election run smoothly were illegal because they dictated how they did things. And it's a long shot lawsuit here in Georgia as well because, for example, one of the claims is that there are more resources in the most populous county in the state, and somehow that's unfair for Democrats. So there have been suits filed, but no real traction gained because it really takes a lot to try to overturn an election or throw out votes. And so far, that burden and those evidence just isn't there.
All right, Stephen, thank you so much for your great reporting. I know you'll continue to stay on top of this critical race.
Thank you.